Hi, welcome to Virtually Together. I'm Janelle Riley. We have a very great guest today, Amir Talai. I actually know him through our work together at the Sacred Fools Theater Company, and I was not surprised that he went on to be a very successful working actor. I loved his show LA to Vegas, which was on Fox. He's been in Harold and Kumar too. He also had a role in Marriage Story, which he will talk about at great length, which is just a great story. So without further ado, please welcome Amir Talai. Amir, thank you so much for joining us. And I want everyone to know that that is your actual background. That is not a virtual background.
How about that? Yep, my wife put in the wallpaper.
That's really cool, actually. I really like it. Could she come over and maybe, when this is all over, fix up my look a little bit?
She's actually Pelotoning in the other room right now, so but I'll ask her.
Really? You have a Peloton.
Yeah,
Well,
lucky.
I was going to ask, during this very strange time that we're in, what are you sort of doing to keep occupied, to keep from going stir crazy? That looks like Kool-Aid, but I'm guessing it's not.
It's not. This is a very nice tequila, and this is what's called sangrita. And what does it say there? Salud, which is something that you drink in Mexico along with a nice tequila. So you have like a sip of tequila and a sip of sangrita.
And anyone watching at home, I want you to know it's 9 p.m. So this is, it's actually 1 in the afternoon, but
definitely not sunlight coming through the window right there.
I didn't even think about that. Is there anything like you're watching or reading that you're enjoying during this time?
I'm deeply into The Circle on Netflix. I think it's a brilliant reality show in general, and then all the more perfect because it's basically a show about people in quarantine, so it's working. And they just dropped the French season, and I speak French, so I'm just like, magnifique. And I love Songland on NBC. I think it's incredibly interesting and incredibly uplifting, and it's all about the sort of like collaborative nature of the songwriting process. It's a really cool reality show. And then I'm doing a lot of volunteering. I'm working for probably 4 different campaigns right now. I was working for the Elizabeth Warren campaign, and then when that fell apart, I jumped to a few others that I'm really, really excited about.
Oh, which ones, if you don't mind saying?
Sure. I think the 2 that I'm most excited about is Christy Smith, who's running for Katie Hill's seat in Santa Clarita. And what's interesting is Christy Smith's election is in a month. Like, if she wins in a month, she is a congressperson, right? Yeah, it's not a primary. It's the election is in a month, pretty much entirely by mail. I think actually entirely by mail, probably. And then if she wins, she has to run again for November.
You're kidding.
Yeah, it's crazy. So, and then the other person who I really, really love is Stephen Smith, who's running for governor in West Virginia. And he is like, he's just cool, man. He has AOC's sort of style and like sort of organizing style, and then Elizabeth Warren's sort of the way she creates plans and builds coalitions, and he's doing something really, really interesting in West Virginia, and I'm excited about it. And I think it's gonna, even if he doesn't win, I think it's gonna lay the groundwork for progressive wins in West Virginia, which I think is really cool and really necessary.
I mean, I'm sort of curious, but I think I know the answer. Obviously you can't vote in the West Virginia election,
No.
but you're not just interested in local stuff. You're looking really nationally and globally at these things.
Yeah, I mean, what I've started to realize is I don't like working for campaigns whose end goal is to win election day, because I feel like if you don't win, it's incredibly disheartening, right? And if you do win, you just sort of don't know where to go from there, right? But what I love about Stephen Smith and what I loved about Elizabeth Warren is there's a sense that like election day is just the beginning, right? And so all the work that I'm doing with Stephen Smith and all the work that Stephen Smith is doing is he is helping people up and down the ballot in West Virginia, so that even if he doesn't win, he's bringing along other people, and he's also laying some really, really important groundwork as far as like organizing, coalition building, so that West Virginia can ultimately become, a reliably blue state, which it could be. It absolutely could be.
How do you even become aware of? I have so much trouble just keeping up on what's going on in my neighborhood. How do
Yeah.
you become aware of people like that?
Well, I'm friends with Kat Calvin, who is the executive director of Spread the Vote, which is a really great organization that they help people in need procure IDs so that they can vote. And typically, if you don't have an ID, you haven't had an ID for a while. So there's some people who like just lost their ID 6 months ago and they're poor and they can't afford to get one. But a lot of times, these are people who have not had a use for ID for 5, 10, 15 years, and now are being told by the state, you have to produce official ID in order to vote. And they may not have the money or the wherewithal to make that happen. So Kat's organization helps them do that, which is really cool because not only do these people then have the ability to vote, but they have the ability to apply for jobs, which they couldn't have before. You can't get into homeless shelters without an ID a lot of the time. You can't get toys for tots if you don't have an ID. So Kat did a tweet thread about Stephen Smith in West Virginia and just what she loves about him. And I was like, those are the things that I love about good politicians. So I was all in. I read up on him. His campaign launch video on his website is just tremendous. And so I checked him out and I was like, yeah, I don't love, working for another handsome white guy, but boy, he's despite that, he's great.
We shouldn't hold that against him.
No,
I am kind of curious. I'm still not over Hillary losing. It was very hard for me to start to hope again, and I was so in love with Elizabeth Warren, and you did so much work for her campaign. And how do you handle it when your candidate doesn't make it? I love what you said about thinking beyond just one single election, but you know, um, again, maybe alcohol helps.
Well, definitely. Well, what I've found that I'm really good at is training and motivating people. I'm also good at canvassing. I'm also good at like the one-on-one conversations and talking to people about what's important to them, et cetera, and sort of persuading voters and turning voters out. But what I'm uniquely qualified to do, compared to most, is being a teacher, right? And so what I'm doing for a lot of campaigns is I'm teaching people how to use the tools that campaigns are giving them to volunteer, right? And so my feeling is like, even even if I train you how to use Elizabeth Warren's call tool and she doesn't win, you now have experience using that call tool that you can use on other campaigns. And so if I teach you in a really good way and in a way that keeps you motivated, hopefully you will think beyond Elizabeth's campaign as well, right? Hopefully you'll be like, okay, that was actually pretty easy. I feel very confident in my ability to make calls now. Who else can I make calls for, right? So same thing with Stephen Smith, right? Like he's activating people in West Virginia who I don't think were as active, and so that has a ripple effect. So yeah, I mean, the thing is, in the long run, we're all gonna lose, right? We're all gonna die, and there will always be greedy assholes stealing elections, and so there, you can't think of it as once we win, then things will be good, right? Because that's just not the case. Like the world sucks, right? So all you can do is fight until you die.
Hmm.
And as sort of morose or morbid as that might sound, it actually makes me feel super super like hopeful and motivated. Um, you fight to get kids out of cages, not because you're going to be able to get all the kids out of cages, but because getting one kid out of a cage is worth it, right? So
Absolutely.
you just keep going. You just keep going. And when you need to take a break, you take a break.
and and not to oversimplify things, but when you were first started talking about that, I sort of thought, like, as an actor, it's sort of like when you go in for an audition and you don't get that job, you're auditioning for so many future jobs just by meeting these people, and you can't just think of it, as like this one thing, you know.
Absolutely.
I think of it so much, like, I can see why your experience as an actor makes you so good at this.
Yeah, right. As an actor, I'm used to losing.
And
Right.
rejection.
Yeah,
You get rejected more than you don't.
absolutely. Yeah, I get rejected so often that when I go knocking on doors in a purple district, I'm used to people saying, no thanks. You know what I mean? Although that doesn't happen that often. Really, I'm not scared of it. You know what I mean? The truth is, people aren't rude or slam doors it very often at all. What's worse is the fear that that's going to happen. That's what like paralyzes people. But fortunately, I never had that fear, so I go.
Wow.
Yeah.
I did some texting banking, for people, and it was a little easy. And people would be rude because I think when you don't have that, face-to-face interaction or even on the phone, it's very easy to like send a snarky text back. But I actually think it was good for me. Like it built up a tougher skin.
That's great. That's great. Yeah, it's so funny that people are like, "Oh no, I want to do texting because it's easier and less confrontational." And that's not been my experience at all. Um, I've found texters. I've gotten like just awful like Trump memes texted back to me. Like it's brutal. Whereas at your door, they see that you're a real person, and I think there's something about like the they understand like, wow, this person is just taking time out of their day to come talk to me, right? Like that's intense. This means a lot to this person, and so
Yeah.
I'm not going to be a massive dick to them. I'm just going to say like, no, not interested, and it happens and you move on.
Well, and you probably know, I don't know from personal experience, but just people get a lot of courage behind a keyboard. Like on Twitter, they say things they would never say to your face.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, I am also on social media. And yes, I've experienced that for sure. Um, you know, uh, um, uh, One of the leaders at SAG-AFTRA, Rebecca Damon, she's the executive vice president, I believe is her title. Um, she was saying on a group call, she's like, look, please keep in mind, everyone, that right now, especially, you never know who on the other end of a text or an email or a social media interaction. Um, like this is the case always, but it's especially the case now that someone may have someone they care about who is in danger, sick. They may be scared about their own status, and so that's been really instructive for me lately. Because I see people have these flare ups,
Yeah.
and part of me wants to be like, we're dealing with a pandemic. Calm down, you asshole. But then I'm also like, hey man, this whoever this is, they're scared, they're mad,
Yeah.
and with good reason on both counts. So I'm trying to be empathetic for that stuff.
Yeah, I absolutely hear that. And you are a much more patient person than I am. So
Not always. I try. I said I'd try.
I'm sort of curious, going back to the start. When did you sort of know you wanted to be an actor? And did you have, I think, like, and you can talk about this with more experience, we're seeing a lot of improvements in diversity and people just talking about diversity. But, when you were growing up, who were the actors you sort of looked to that you wanted to emulate?
It's funny, like I think I had a really interesting when I was young, I would say the one I looked up to the most was Tom Hanks, because he just seemed like sort of an everyman. And he started out doing like Bosom Buddies, and then he went on to do like Philadelphia, and I was like, fucking wow, like that's the dream. That's the absolute dream. Um, and um, and I didn't have any ethnic actors that I looked up to. I because there really weren't many to choose from. And so I have this sense that like I wanted to be like Tom Hanks, but I also, part of me was like, but I think even as a young kid, I had a sense of limitations, right? Like
Mhm.
I knew I would never be a leading, like I could never have a lead, right? There's no Middle Eastern leading men, or there weren't. And so I was sort of like, I'd want the kind of career that Tom Hanks has, um, with the caveat that obviously I can't. So, you know, I guess I just told myself that, look, well, there's nothing I can do about my Middle Easternness. So I'm gonna try as hard as I can and go as far as I can. Um, but I've always had a real sense of the limitations that my ethnicity places on the situation. Um, you know, sometimes you get lucky, like Tony Shalhoub got lucky and basically never did anything Middle Eastern. And I don't know, you know, I don't really know why. I guess he passes as like Jewish-ish. And so he just plays Jewish parts. And I don't know to what extent he decided not to play Middle Eastern roles, or maybe he couldn't book them. But he just he just went off on that trajectory, and and never had to worry about that. And so he's been able to,
Mhm.
you know, play Adrian Monk, right? Adrian
I think it's
Monk,
he's just Monk. Yeah.
yeah. Right. And you know, Marvelous as Mrs. Maisel and all that stuff. Um, uh, you know, I don't know why that happened for him, as and why other people didn't. But Yeah, I always knew I wanted to be an actor ever since like probably elementary school. You know, the first thing I ever wanted to do was I wanted to be Michael Winslow.
Oh no, the guy who makes the sounds.
Yep, the guy who makes the sounds in Police Academy. I was fucking rapt. I was like, this is amazing. That's what I want to do with my life. I had none of that skill whatsoever. I was doing like childhood impressions of Michael Winslow in Police Academy, but I was like, yep, that's gonna be my job. But I just got the sense that like being silly was my métier, and so I wanted to find a way to do that, and I kind of never stopped.
I mean, you've done so many different things in so many different genres. I'm curious, was there a time you sort of felt, I always hear that actors never feel secure in their jobs, but like, I remember many years ago, there was a breakdown looking for an Amir Talai type. What's it like when you see something like that?
It's pretty amazing. It's pretty amazing. You know, I've had some definite sort of milestones of sort of levels of recognition, right? And that was a big one. And That's happened a few times. One of the times that it was, although the breakdown says Caucasian, we are willing to other types, such as an Amir Talai type. And I was like, I don't know how I feel about that. I guess that means I'm Caucasian adjacent. Yeah, I'll take it. I'll take it. Uh, um, and another one was when I reached 100 credits on IMDb. That was just like, wow, like I can't believe it. Like I just looked at that number 100, and I was like, that's incredible.
Mm.
Um, yeah, you know, it you never feel totally secure, and I often think that like, hey, this could be my last job. Um, but but Definitely moments like that, you look, I would say, you don't look forward so much in moments like that. You don't think, I've arrived, I'm good. What you do think is, I've done well. So you get to sort of have some perspective, and you get to look back and appreciate that. Yeah. So when that happened, I certainly didn't think, oh well, that makes me feel more secure in my career. No, but it did make me appreciate what I had accomplished thus far.
I'm so OCD that I would like be like, well, I don't want to stop at one. I want to stop at 100. 101 is like an uneven number. We're just going to end it there. But obviously that wouldn't happen.
If I'm not mistaken, I think I was like 104 when I checked it, and I was like, oh, when did this happen?
It's like waiting for the speedometer to turn
I
over.
know, and
Oh, I missed it. What has been your most challenging role?
Um, boy, I'm gonna be honest. I don't get challenged very much. I don't have that opportunity, to be honest. It's not something that's afforded to the vast majority of actors, let alone actors of color. I like to say that the majority of my career is spent silently standing next to famous white people, and I've made peace with that. I wish it were different. I wish I could have truly challenging, meaty roles, but to be honest, those don't get written for people who look like me as much, right? So you look at Rami Malek, and the work he does is tremendous, and the opportunities he gets are tremendous, and obviously those feed into one another. But in a 12-hour shoot day, cameras are rolling for maybe 90 minutes. The vast majority of my time is spent standing around, shooting the shit. Even if you look at a movie like Avengers, right? Most of them aren't acting for most of that movie, right? It's not terribly challenging work, even though they're getting paid a bazillion dollars. It's not challenging. It's fun. It's fun to watch. But mostly they're, running around and screaming and chasing a tennis ball that eventually becomes a spaceship or whatever the fuck. You know what I mean? And
Which isn't
so
a skill in and of itself.
absolutely it's a skill, right? But I wouldn't say it's a challenge as far as acting, right? Most of us don't do much acting. It's a lot, every freaking commercial breakdown that I go in on is like, must have expressive facialness or whatever, expressive faces, looking for expressive faces. And I'm like, yeah, okay, that's me, right? I guess the challenging times have been when I've worked with actors or directors who are unpleasant, right? Because like I said, most of my time is just hanging out with my fellow actors and the director. So if the actor or the director is unpleasant, then that has a huge effect on your day. Mm-hmm. But for me, acting is rarely a challenge. It's mostly just fun, right? When I get something to do, it's being silly. It's goofs and make 'em ups, and yeah.
I love that. I've never heard goofs and make 'em ups. That describes acting so perfectly. But I think there's also a skill like on LA to Vegas, you were kind of the straight man a lot of the time to Dylan McDermott.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember all the actors on Arrested Development would talk about what Jason Bateman did on that show and how it can be hard to be the straight man. And you have to like be grounded while everyone around you was going crazy.
Yeah. I mean, I guess maybe I shouldn't sell myself short. I think that I do good work, and I don't doubt that. But I think that a lot of it has come down to, over the years, not working too hard, right? Like not doing too much, keeping things simple, listening, not feeling like I've got to make this funny. But sort of just trusting that whatever happens between you and Dylan or whoever will be there, and that it's there in the script. I'm always so fascinated by actors who, like Johnny Depp, definitely he puts so much on all of his characters, and I find that so fascinating. And I'm not judging that at all. What I'm saying is, rarely do any of us have the opportunity to do something like that, right? Like a Captain Jack Sparrow. Like there's so much going on there, right? Usually we're just playing versions of ourselves, slightly smarter, slightly dumber, slightly more pent up, slightly more free spirited. So it's really just about sort of getting I don't know, just comfortable with that, you
Mm-hmm.
know? Yeah.
I know last year you got to do a play at the Hollywood Fringe, in which you were the leading man. How often do you get back on stage, and do you find that like that offers more opportunities sometimes?
Yeah, for sure. That was an amazing experience. And the year before, or maybe 2 years before, I did another play. And theater is a different animal. I find that theater directors and theater producers are uh, more open, more often. Uh, Not to say across the board, but to casting more diverse casts. Um, and I would say I get on stage about once a year, maybe. It's tough because it's very time consuming, and
Mhm.
it's sort of inherently a pay cut, right? And
Oh,
there's
big time.
yeah, and
You're
what's
being
interesting
kind.
is there's not too many actors um, uh, who are at my level, who can do theater, because theater is most actors are not making any money, right? And so doing theater is like easy, right? Because it's like, well, this isn't a pay cut. Um, and then there's actors who are super famous for whom a pay cut is irrelevant, right? Um, Brian Dennehy, God rest his soul, did a lot of theater. Didn't matter because he had massive TV and film residuals coming in, so he
He had
could,
that Tommy Boy money.
right? He could take a pay cut for a 6 month play or a 1 year play on Broadway because it didn't matter. But then actors like me, it's tough for us because I'm definitely like, if I take a big pay cut to do a play, it gets tough to pay my bills, uh, if that contract is long enough,
Mm.
and I might be missing out on pretty big stuff, right? If I do a play that's a couple hundred a week, which keeps me from doing a guest star job that's 5,000 for a week, that's a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I always tell people if you see them doing theater, they're not doing it for the money. They're genuinely passionate about it.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
Before we go, I know you've told this story at least on social media. I don't know if you've talked about it outside of there, but you appeared in one of the best movies from last year, Marriage Story,
Hmm.
and you have a great story about your character's name. Was he unnamed in the script? Did you go to Noah Baumbach and?
No, so the character was named Gary. And Noah, something that I've noticed in a lot of Noah's films is that most of the characters have sort of unremarkable sort of Anglo names, right? Gary, John, Cindy. And I think that probably comes from Noah's experience, maybe, right? Like, you write what you know, and if you're around a lot of white people all the time, that's who you write. Um, Now that said, Noah's cast people of color before, but the names often sort of just stay the same because they're just what they were in the script. So I auditioned for the role of Gary, which is like a 2-line role, and I was excited to be offered the job. But and I was like, so look, I'm on this TV show, LA to Vegas. and I'm making pretty good money on that. What are you guys paying for the role of Gary? And they're like, jack shit, take it or leave it. And I was like, okay, all right. Well, listen, would you be open to maybe changing the character name so that it maybe like suited me a little more than Gary? Because I've never met a Persian guy named Gary. Um, and casting was like, nope, you got to take it or leave it. Talk to Noah when you get on set. And I was like, okay, that's awkward. Also, like, come on, guys, I'm on a TV show. Like, you could at least like maybe sort of mention like, hey, we got this guy who's on a TV show to do a 2-line role, and we can't pay him more than scale. We can't give him a good dressing room or a parking spot. Could we change the character name? But they were like, nope, nope. Talk about it with Noah. And I was like, okay, well, look, I really want to work with Noah. So fine, I'll take the part. So I get to set, and literally the first thing I said to Noah, I was like, hey Noah, great to meet you. Listen, I'm not sure if casting mentioned, and I'm nervous, right? Like I know that this is not a lot to ask for, but I'm still nervous because you never know which director is like sort of precious about his material, right? Who's like an auteur and who doesn't want suggestions and doesn't, want this or that. You get nervous sometimes, and especially in bigger things, you get nervous. Like when I do a short film for a buddy, I'm like, hey, let's change the name. I don't want to play Frank. I want to play Farhad. And they're like, yeah, great. But walking up to Noah Baumbach, right? I'm like, I don't know if casting mentioned he's like, oh yeah, the name thing. Yeah. Just like email me like a list of names, and we'll figure something out. And I was like, oh, okay, great, thank you so much. So I went to his assistant and I was like, hey, I just talked to Noah, can I get his email? And so I emailed him this list of names that I keep and that I send to casting people or directors whenever I make this ask, which is often. I make this ask every time I have a character name that I think doesn't suit me. I was recently cast as Arthur, and there's no Persian guys named Arthur, just because the parents would pronounce it Arter, which like doesn't make sense, right?
Right.
Oh, actually, no. My character name on the Baumbach movie was Greg, and that doesn't make sense because Persian parents would say Geregori, and it doesn't. That just wouldn't happen, right? Maybe like Dave, because a Persian person can pronounce it. Anyway, I might have had too much tequila this morning. I'm gonna be honest. So I send him the list, and the next day I come to set, and it still says Greg on the call sheet, and it's not a big deal, but like I'm running out of days because I know they won't make the change after I leave. You know what I mean? And I'm like, hey, I noticed on the call sheet it still says Greg. I don't know if you got my email. And he's like, yeah, I looked at that list and I'm just like, I'm feeling like shit right now because I'm like, oh God, he hates it. He's not going to do this. He's like, none of those names really like did anything for me. Can we just call you Amir? Like, I just like Amir. And I was like, yeah, sounds great. You want a character named Amir in a Noah Baumbach movie? Yes, yes, thank you. Yes, please, thank you. And I was like, great, it's going to say Amir on my IMDb on a Noah Baumbach movie. That's great. And then I looked at the sides for that day, and I realized that Alan Alda has the line, I agree with Greg. And I was like, oh, they're going to have to change that. And Alan Alda is going to say my name in a Noah Baumbach movie. And I was like, I was beside myself. And I was like, who knows? Maybe they'll cut it, whatever. When I watched the movie, and right at that, we got to that place, and Alan Alda goes, "Look, you heard what Amir said," and Adam Driver goes, "Fuck the space," and it was like this moment, right? And I was like, "Oh, Amir was part of this moment."
Yep.
And it was great. It was great. And then later, I saw that they changed it in the actual screenplay that they published. It says Amir in there, and it made me cry. It was just really cool. And all this is to say, this is not just because like, oh, I want my name out there, but I think it's important. There's a reason why I do this, right? There's a reason why I asked for my name to be changed, because I think it's important for characters named Amir and Farhad and Mohammed to exist in American cinema separate from characters that have bombs strapped to their chest. Um, you know, the majority of this country, most white people, 75% of white people in this country don't have any friends who are people of color. And that blew my mind when I read that. And I realized that what that means is for most white people in this country, the people of color that they know are the ones they see on TV. And if the only Amirs and Mohammeds they see have bombs strapped to their chests, right? Or are somehow engaged in the war on terror, what that means is they create a binary in their heads of good Muslims and bad Muslims, right? As opposed to just like Persian guys who are divorce attorneys,
Yeah.
Persian guys who are, have real estate firms, and so I think it's important. It's not surprising that half this country voted for a guy who said he wanted to ban Muslims because they thought, oh yeah, Muslims are coming here to blow this country up. They'd have no reason to think anything other than that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it means a lot to me when directors, and the vast majority of them are like, yeah, I'll change your name, no problem. It means a lot when they're willing to do that. So, and it meant a lot for Noah to do that, especially in such a high profile project. It was really, really cool.
That is amazing. And actually, one of the things I love about that story was I have always found Noah Baumbach so intimidating because he's so smart, and just like operate on another level. And I got to spend some time with him this last season. We did a lot of Q&As for Marriage Story. And he really is a nice guy. I found out there was nothing to be intimidated by. Well, I'm still intimidated because he is brilliant. but yeah, when I first heard that, you went up to him, I was like, oh my God, I don't think I could do that.
And I had to do it in the first fucking 10 seconds of me meeting him because I knew that my time was short. You know what I mean? I know he's a busy guy. And so I figure the time he's taking to greet me is maybe the only time he's going to have for me. I didn't know. As it turned out, over the next few days, he was warm and affable and chatty, but I didn't know.
You don't ever know, but that's so wonderful. And I think everyone's probably seen it, but if not, check out Marriage Story on Netflix. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm guessing you're fully drunk now.
Yeah, let's do it.
That drink. I so appreciate you taking the time, and I so appreciate your background.
Totally my pleasure. Oh, good. I'll mention it to my wife. And can we appreciate my t-shirt before we go?
I love your t-shirt.
All right, gang.
I love that. Thanks so much.
All right. Thank you so much.